Most men spend their entire lives chasing the wrong things when it comes to attracting women. They buy into the myth that you need a stacked bank account, model-level looks, or an endless supply of smooth, rehearsed pickup lines just to get a woman's attention. They try so hard to impress, to perform, and to prove their worth, completely missing the bigger picture. The truth is much simpler, and it's going to save you a tremendous amount of wasted effort. The most powerful thing that makes a woman feel instantly drawn to you isn't something you buy, and it isn't a clever speech you memorize. It comes down to a quiet, almost invisible gesture that operates entirely under the radar, one that most men completely overlook because they are too busy trying to perform. When you master this subtle gesture, everything changes in how a woman perceives you. You stop coming across as another eager guy trying to win her approval, and you instantly step into the energy of a man who is grounded, secure, and effortlessly magnetic. She doesn't just notice you. Her entire nervous system shifts, letting her guard down before she even processes why she feels so drawn to you. And if you've ever wondered why one man can say almost nothing and still create a powerful sense of connection while another man talks endlessly and gets nowhere, this is where the difference begins. Because here's something I want you to think about. Have you ever walked away from an interaction with a woman and replayed every word in your head? You wondered whether you said the wrong thing, whether you should have made her laugh more, whether you should have complimented her differently, or whether you somehow failed to impress her. If you've ever done that, you're not alone. And I'd love to know in the comments, have you ever felt like you were trying too hard to make someone like you? Share your experience, because someone reading your comment may realize they're not the only person who has struggled with this. Mary Smith, host of Senior Mindful Living YouTube channel. And today, we're going to look beyond superficial dating advice and talk about something much more meaningful: presence, not manipulation, not a trick, not a technique designed to make a woman chase you. We're talking about the subtle combination of calm movement, comfortable eye contact, and the ability to remain present without desperately filling every moment with words. If you're ready to understand why this matters, stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you'll understand not only what this subtle behavior is, but also how to practice it in a way that feels completely natural. Let's start with something most people misunderstand about attraction. Attraction isn't simply a conscious decision. A woman doesn't necessarily meet a man and consciously think, this man appears emotionally secure, therefore I am attracted to him. Human perception is much faster and more complicated than that. Before we carefully analyze someone's words, we're constantly noticing their facial expressions, posture, tone of voice, movement, proximity, responsiveness, and emotional consistency. Think about walking into a room and immediately sensing that someone is nervous. They may not have said a word. You simply notice something. Maybe their movements were rushed. Maybe their voice was tense. Maybe they couldn't sit still. Maybe they were constantly looking around for reassurance. Now imagine the opposite. Someone enters the room slowly. Their shoulders are relaxed. Their expression is open. They don't desperately search the room for approval. When they speak, they don't rush. When someone else speaks, they actually listen. That person communicates something very different without saying much at all. This is why the behavior we're discussing isn't really one isolated gesture. It's a form of grounded presence. And one of the clearest ways grounded presence becomes visible is through the way a man approaches a woman. Imagine two men entering the same social situation. The first notices an attractive woman and immediately changes his entire personality. He rushes over, starts talking quickly, begins performing, throws out compliments, and watches her face after every sentence to see whether she's impressed. The second man notices her too, but he doesn't suddenly abandon his natural rhythm. He walks over calmly. He gives her appropriate personal space. He makes comfortable eye contact. He smiles naturally. And when there's a pause, he doesn't panic. Which man seems more comfortable with himself? The answer isn't necessarily the better-looking man, the wealthier man, or the man with the cleverest line. It's often the man who doesn't appear to be fighting for approval. And that distinction is incredibly important. Calmness should never be confused with arrogance. Being relaxed doesn't mean acting like you're better than someone. It means you don't need to prove that you're better. That's a completely different psychological state. When you approach someone, your pace can communicate your internal state. Rushing isn't automatically unattractive, of course. Sometimes you're simply in a hurry. But when your movements become frantic because you're anxious about the woman's reaction, that anxiety can become noticeable. So here's a practical exercise. The next time you're entering a social situation, don't immediately focus on attracting anyone. Instead, spend 30 seconds becoming aware of your body. Relax your jaw, drop your shoulders, slow your breathing, feel your feet against the ground. Look around the room instead of immediately searching for validation. Then, speak to people normally. This sounds almost ridiculously simple, but it's powerful because you're training yourself to remain present instead of becoming consumed by the outcome. And that brings us to the second part of this subtle behavior: eye contact. Eye contact is one of the most misunderstood forms of communication. Some men avoid it completely because they're nervous. Others go too far in the opposite direction. They stare intensely, barely blinking, because they've heard that strong eye contact creates attraction. But confidence doesn't look like staring. Healthy eye contact is flexible. You look at her while she's speaking. You naturally look away sometimes, you return your attention, you smile, you allow the interaction to breathe. The message isn't, "I'm trying to dominate you." The message is much simpler. "I am comfortable being present with you." That difference matters. And here's an important point that dating advice often gets wrong. Eye contact is not a magic switch that automatically creates attraction. There is no secret number of seconds that guarantees chemistry. Instead, eye contact works as part of a larger emotional interaction. Warmth matters, context matters, mutual interest matters, and most importantly, consent and comfort matter. If a woman looks uncomfortable, repeatedly turns away, gives short answers, or creates distance, the confident response isn't to stare harder, it's to respect the signal. Real confidence can accept a no. In fact, one of the strongest signs of emotional maturity is the ability to remain respectful when someone doesn't reciprocate your interest. And then comes the third element, perhaps the most revealing one of all: silence. Most people are uncomfortable with silence because silence gives the mind room to think. You're talking to someone you like. There's a pause. Your brain immediately screams, "Say something." So you start talking. You make another joke. You ask another question. You tell another story. You keep filling the space because you're afraid the other person might notice you're nervous. But what if you didn't? What if you allowed the moment to exist? Imagine you're sitting across from a woman at a coffee shop. She finishes telling you a story. There's a brief pause. Instead of immediately jumping in, you smile and simply take a moment. Not an exaggerated pause. Not some calculated alpha male silence. Just a natural moment. That small pause communicates something powerful. You're listening. You're not desperate to control the conversation. You're not terrified of being judged. You're comfortable enough to let another person finish their thought. And that can create a completely different conversational atmosphere. Psychological research on social interaction consistently shows that people pay attention not only to what others say, but also to nonverbal cues, such as facial expressions, vocal qualities, posture, timing, and interpersonal distance. Human beings continuously interpret these signals, often outside conscious awareness. So when someone appears calm, attentive, and emotionally consistent, that can influence how comfortable the interaction feels. But there's another layer here. You cannot fake genuine security forever. You can memorize eye contact techniques. You can memorize conversation starters. You can memorize body language tricks. But if internally you're thinking, "I desperately need this woman to like me," your behavior may eventually reveal that tension. You'll check her reactions constantly. You'll become overly concerned about saying the perfect thing. You'll interpret every smile as attraction and every neutral expression as rejection. And suddenly, the interaction becomes less about meeting another human being and more about passing an examination. That's exhausting. And it's not how meaningful connection is built. This is why one of the most important skills you can develop isn't learning how to make women attracted to you. It's learning how to tolerate uncertainty. You don't know whether she's going to like you. You don't know whether there will be chemistry. You don't know whether you'll see each other again. And that's okay. You can be interested without being desperate. You can be confident without being arrogant. You can flirt without manipulating. You can express attraction while still respecting her freedom to choose. That is emotional strength. Let's make this practical. The next time you meet someone you're attracted to, give yourself one simple goal. Don't try to make her like you. Try to understand her. Ask a genuine question. Listen carefully. Notice what makes her light up. Respond to what she actually says instead of waiting for your turn to speak. Keep your body relaxed. Make natural eye contact. And when the conversation pauses, don't immediately rescue it. Give the moment room. You may discover something surprising. When you're no longer desperately trying to create chemistry, you become much better at recognizing whether chemistry actually exists. That's a huge difference. Think about a man named David. David had spent years believing that he needed to become more impressive. He bought expensive clothes, he memorized jokes, he watched endless dating videos. Before every conversation with a woman, he prepared 3 or 4 things he could say. But he was constantly exhausted, because every interaction felt like a performance. Eventually, he changed one thing. He stopped trying to win. Instead, he focused on being present. He started listening more. He stopped rushing through conversations. He became comfortable with short pauses. He didn't interpret every interaction as a referendum on his worth. And something interesting happened. He became more relaxed, but he also became more selective. He stopped chasing women who clearly weren't interested. He stopped taking rejection personally. And because he was less desperate for approval, his interactions became more natural. That is the deeper lesson. The goal isn't to develop a technique that makes every woman attracted to you. No technique can do that. The goal is to become someone who can create a comfortable, respectful, emotional environment while remaining completely secure in his own identity. And if a woman responds positively, wonderful. If she doesn't, you haven't lost your dignity. You simply discovered that the connection wasn't mutual. There's freedom in that. Now, remember those subtle signals people often talk about. A smile, leaning closer, sustained eye contact, facing towards someone, a warmer tone of voice. These can sometimes indicate comfort or interest, but none of them should be treated as definitive proof of attraction. A woman touching her hair doesn't automatically mean she's attracted to you. A smile doesn't automatically mean she wants romantic attention. Eye contact doesn't automatically mean consent. Human behavior is contextual. The strongest signal is consistency. Does she voluntarily continue the conversation? Does she ask you questions? Does she make an effort to spend time with you? Does she initiate contact? Does she seem comfortable and engaged? Those patterns tell you far more than one isolated gesture. And here's the final shift I want you to make. Stop asking, how can I make her want me? Start asking, can we create something genuinely comfortable and mutual together? That question changes everything. Because attraction isn't about conquering someone's defenses. It's about discovering whether two people naturally enjoy being around each other. It's about curiosity. It's about emotional safety. It's about respect. It's about being confident enough to express interest without demanding a particular response. And perhaps most importantly, it's about becoming comfortable enough with yourself that another person's approval becomes something you appreciate rather than something you desperately need. So the next time you find yourself attracted to a woman, remember the quiet gesture we've been talking about. Slow down, be present, offer warm, natural eye contact, and don't be afraid of a peaceful pause. Don't use these behaviors as tricks. Use them as reminders to return to yourself. Because when you're genuinely grounded, you don't have to manufacture confidence. You don't have to perform masculinity. You don't have to prove that you're the most impressive person in the room. You simply become present. And sometimes that's far more powerful than anything you could have rehearsed. If this perspective gave you something to think about, take a moment to like the video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And tell me in the comments, do you think confidence is more about what a man says or how comfortable he is when he doesn't have to say anything? And if you want more psychology-based conversations about attraction, emotional connection, relationships, and human behavior, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Because sometimes the most important lessons about attraction aren't about learning how to get someone's attention. They're about learning how to stop chasing it.